Good afternoon, all participants, distinguished guests, and my dearest learners. Thank you very much for being here with us, and I'd like to welcome you all to our special lecture by our esteemed visiting professor who is here with us at IGNOU Regional Center, Kolkata. But before I get into further details, I would like to also remind you that the IGNOU admissions have been extended till 15th of February. So in case, in case all of you are trying to get into the admission process, please be aware that it has been extended. And also there is a very good news for the MLIS and BLIS students because we have worked on a collaboration with National Library. So all of you who are MLI, if you are here as MLIS, BLIS students, it is indeed a privilege that now your skills and your internship can be with the National Library. And as you are aware, the better your internship prospects are, further on in your profession also, you can see how it will be. So IGNOU রিজিনাল সেন্টারের তরফ থেকে আপনাদের সবাইকে অনেক অনেক আমার অশেষ গ্রিটিংস অ্যান্ড আপনারা আজকে এখানে এসেছেন and I hope we are going to all spend some time with her. Every day we have this long session of our academic activities, but sometimes we forget for quality education, we also need times to reflect on special areas and special ideas, more innovative ventures, and that's part of our initiative that we have invited Professor Sánchez Jankowski here with us. On behalf of IGNOU and Kolkata Regional Center, it is my proud privilege to welcome all of you on behalf of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Uma Kanjilal, other senior colleagues from IGNOU headquartered New Delhi, and all other respected members of IGNOU fraternity, regional directors of different regional centers all over India and abroad, academicians, coordinators, counselors from IGNOU study centers and learner support centers, invited guests who have gathered here from across 13 districts of West Bengal, friends, IGNOU learners, IGNOU alumni, who have joined here also as an expression of their support and solidarity of IGNOU's cause of service and its tremendous potential to revolutionize and democratize education in India. All of you are aware that IGNOU is a forerunner of digitized education, and recently one of our most significant initiative was taken by Professor Uma Kanjilal, whereby we, IGNOU participated and coordinated the summit on AI future ready open and distance learning. So we are moving on to the next step where IGNOU will become the digital university, a step forward towards that. And you also know that the fact that we are reaching so many of you at the same time today here through the technology-enabled education system, it is an amazing and an extremely, efficient model of innovation in education. IGNOU itself reflects the kind of innovation that we are talking about today. Had IGNOU not been there and this whole mandate of open and distance not been there, I'm afraid educational literacy that we talk about, the literacy rate that we talk about for our country today would not have gone to that extent. And open and distance education has tried and made an effort to take education to every doorstep, beyond borders of age, beyond borders of gender, region, language, and it extends to all. It was an effort to bring everyone into the fold of education. Now, with the coming of NEP 2020, the Indian education policy has taken a different, a very, very innovative plunge. And through that, it has been brought to us again the importance of innovation in every field. So we have tried from all our all our capacities. The object of our open education system is to make education relevant once again, to make it more learner centric, to make it more flexible in times of in terms of time, and the time with which a learner can spend for education. So we realize nowadays that not everybody can spend so much time for education. There's so many other things that is possible, and COVID 2019 also proved to us the importance of making education even more to open up the barriers, the boundaries of education further. Today's lecture and today's intervention, by which Professor Sanchez Jankowski is here with us, is an effort to make education more quality based, so that once there was this hiccup, I must say, to understand whether open and distance learning could be as quality centric as it needs to be. And it is required, and although we have moved ahead in terms of expansion and in terms of inclusion and taking education to each and every corners, the element of quality and excellence is something which is a challenge in front of open and distance learning. And these are efforts by which this university tries to take quality education, quality research to the doorstep of all learners from IGNOU. I express my gratitude and appreciation to our esteemed honored guest here, Professor Sanchez Jankowski, distinguished visiting professor who at the Regional Center, Kolkata, and he has received his PhD in political science and economics from MIT, where he concentrated on political and economic development. His expertise is in the sociology of poverty, having spent more than 30 years conducting research on various aspects of life that affect poor people in particular ways. This research has been in areas of housing in Brazil. His research has been in areas of health in a number of West African nations, Fiji and India. Also crime in the US, Italy, Mexico. He has also worked on culture and neighborhood construction in the US and education in the US too. Much of his work has involved him living and directly observing the behaviors of poor people and those who interact with them in everyday life. Presently, he is engaged in a 6-year comparative research project that looks at how to understand poverty among indigenous people by comparing indigenous Fijians living in the outer islands of the Fijian Republic and 3 Native American tribes in the US. He has written a number of books and articles. His most recent books have been include The Cracks in Pavement, Social Change and Resilience in Poor Neighborhoods, Inequality by Design, Cracking the Bell Curve Myth, and Islands in the Street, Gangs and American Urban Society. Currently, he is finishing 2 books, one of the problems that youth from poor families have in making educational transitions and the causes and processes of interethnic violence in US high schools. Today, he is going to share his insights and his experiences from a particular lecture that he is supposed to deliver with us, Universal Education for Social Development and Innovation. However, in order to make the lecture more interactive with all the learners, we feel that I would like to discuss this with you in a question-answer format and like to ask you a few questions regarding your lecture and how you think that framework could be relevant for India and the situation and the context that we now live in. So, firstly, welcome to India, and we are extremely privileged to have you here with us, sir, and also very, very privileged that you are addressing all our learners. And your work in social sciences will probably give them insights through which they can carry their future of education forward. As I was saying, they have to make their education relevant, they have to make their education innovative, they have to make their education more contextual and more skill based, so that they can make a contribution to the nation. Having said that, uh, can I please request you to give us your reflection on the status of education as a global scenario, and how it could be relevant in the Indian scenario?
Well, I think the most important thing is that education is important in every society, not those that are simply thinking of themselves as in the developmental stage, but those who have already considered themselves to be actually quite developed, or at an extreme level, like you see in Europe and in the United States. I think the one thing that I want to share with everyone is why education is terribly, terribly important. It has two actual elements of it that make it important. One is that it is a source of information, and that source is constantly developing as new and new things are discovered. That section of education and making that information available to everyone is enormously important. So for the person who can't read, that opens up a whole new world when they can read. And that is an area where they then become actually much more powerful and free, because the more information they get, the more chances they have of utilizing it. So making education more available is one thing that every society needs to actually consider, and know that the job of making that expansion is never over. It will never be over. The second part about education is, independent of just providing information and knowledge, is providing the kinds of skills that are necessary to use it in effective ways. And there are two elements of effectiveness. There's the first element for the individual, and then there's a second element for the society. And they both are related. So if a society is going to have hope of developing and making a better place for itself, both in terms of leisure and in comfort, and things that actually can enjoy, it depends on individuals within it. And those individuals have to have hope and a chance actually to have success. And a chance not necessarily to be a billionaire, which all of us can't be, but it's a chance to make a decent life in it, which is, we could consider livable, comfortable, and something that makes it sort of, for us, is a sense that we've actually accomplished something. Now, I take that part seriously. Every political leader takes that part seriously. And all economists are then given the job of saying, how can we actually make it happen? And almost like the engineers of it. So where the political scientists and the sociologists are the architects, the economist sees him or herself as the engineers. And the one thing that I would encourage everybody to understand is something that's often used in economics, and but it has a very practical sense to it. And that is the concept of human development, or and in terms of the fact that you're dealing with human capital. And the idea of human capital has two parts to it. One is the economic part that's called capital. And capital, in the way in which it's used often, is the way in which people can exchange it, just like money, for something they want to get something. They want to buy something. They want to get somewhere. That part of capital in this concept is how the individual him or herself can actually bring themselves to a marketplace that is the job marketplace, whatever marketplace we want, and be successful and compete in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that part means that they have to have certain skills, and they have to bring those skills to the marketplace, and they have to tell the marketplace or those people who are actually in a position to buy or accumulate that they can do the job.
You can do the job.
So IGNOU, which is an exciting place to be, because it is in the business of extending education out. It knows that it has to continue to innovate. That will never end. And that translation should be to every individual. That is, what IGNOU is doing, what businesses do,
Yep.
what governments do, individuals have to do. And one of the things that they have to understand is that they've got to develop in this time skills that are marketable. And that will never end. And that will continue. Often people will ask, well, I went to school and I didn't get always the job that I actually wanted. But education can only give you the chance to get that job. It is not in control of whether you get that job or not. And there it is controlled by the marketplace. And that's the other thing that education can provide. If it's actually building people who have this human capital, who are in fact doing jobs in businesses, and that businesses actually are able, through their expertise, and there's expertise at all levels, with all kinds of occupations, they expand. The more expansion means the more opportunities for more people. So everybody is making a contribution to that. Everything I said is what every government in the world wants to do. And there is what our job is. And when you're in education, both as the educator or the administrator, the educator and the student, you have to understand you're given a chance. It is not going to be a guarantee that you is, but you don't have a chance
if you don't take it. But this is so interesting, the way I hope learners, because there are a lot of learners here too, just to kind of wrap up what Professor just said. It is so important that you start questioning yourself when you get a degree, that what have you learned and now are you ready in terms of your skills to contribute anything? Because although the final result is not really in your hand, because it is more market driven, as he was just mentioning. But still, if you don't have the skills, you anyway do not have any chance. So every program and every education and every degree that you choose to take up, it should be determined by your own analysis of how much is this outcome based, what are you finally going to contribute through that degree. So each learner has to be aware of these, what your takeaways are from the universities also. And part of what I was telling you earlier, the opportunities that University IGNOU as a university provides to all our learners is take them to creating these skills and creating these outcomes, and even making the outcomes of the education more fruition based. So when you go for an MLIS degree, and what we are trying to do is make sure you go to the best place to get your internship, so that you're trained as professional librarians and you can contribute something more than that, instead of just wasting your time and going to places where you don't really learn anything. So start questioning these what is lacking in that. I come back to my second question to you, and I think it will be interesting that to understand, how do you think what do you think is the special role of education in today's society, vis-a-vis the role that education was playing earlier. I mentioned this in this way because if you see the American society and Indian society, if you take them in a linear pathway of development, obviously the development that what we are seeking today was experienced by your country many years back. So that probably gives you a better experienced nation about the hiccups that you went through for innovation. These are areas that we're trying to concentrate on now in our context of the NEP 2020. That is what we're trying to get in: multidisciplinary education, borderless education, the choice of a scientist who wants to become a musician. These were things which were not very present, but we are trying to get them here. So how would you say your country's experience? Could you share some of your insights from your country? How did US in the American education system deal with multidisciplinary skill education and all that when you first went through that?
Excuse me. I think the big thing is that the one thing about the United States that I would hope that every country said to everybody, wherever you come from, no matter what social status you came from in area, is that it's possible for you to be not just educated, but to have a good life.
Oh, okay.
And to have a good economic life.
Yeah.
I think most people are seeing education for two purposes. One is, how can they make their life better?
Mm-hmm.
And when we say their life, we have economic life, but we could actually have health, and we could deal with health. I mean, we talked about educating people. What if somebody that couldn't read, or etc., and they're going to a hospital? There are ways in which they actually then act. Can they act for themselves? Can they actually, for themselves, say to the doctor in some kind of way, ask questions,
yes,
because it is their body.
Right.
Awareness,
you mean?
but aware of this. Now that's the skills.
Yeah, that's good.
One thing is I know going to school, my parents, I am one of those people that I hope the people out there who are listening to, I did not come from a middle class family. In fact, I was adopted out of an orphanage, and the adoption family that got me was a working class family. That my adopted father, was a janitor in a school, and my mother just made beds in a hospital. And it just shows you that what they wanted us to do better, my family, and we actually had to work at it. And the one thing that I would actually say to everyone about this is that you can't be satisfied.
And
What's
then
the
further on, you went to MIT, you were in Harvard, and that's like a success story which we would have thought only happened to the privileged class, but from where you came.
But what is really important for every IGNOU student to know, I went to a junior college to start with, which is a transition. It is exactly like IGNOU. I started there, which means that people can start and they can't see me. In America, we wouldn't say I was an exception. Mm-hmm. And most people in the citizens of India shouldn't think of themselves as exceptions. They actually can do it. But it isn't going to be automatic. I didn't get to MIT automatic. It's a process. And and everyone should know in education, one of the things over all these years I've learned is people cannot doubt themselves. They have to just continue to work hard at what they're doing and not be satisfied.
Not be satisfied.
And not be satisfied, ever being satisfied. That I know all I can know. Even at my age now, I'm not satisfied. There's more to know. That's
exactly what IGNOU has. We have lifelong learning. So, right. Our youngest student could be as young as 22-year-old, but the oldest could be 85-year-old. So that's also another space that IGNOU covers. The concept of lifelong learning, where you continue a degree for your own development and then you take it on because of interest, because of areas that you need to probably develop in your professional life, or else further just because you're interested in that. Year before last, we had a PhD scholar who was he was 82, I'm not sure 82 or 85, but he was as old as that and he got his PhD degree. And there are not many universities today who grant a degree to a person of that age. But it did happen, it does happen in terms of age, and like you said, improvement of oneself is also possible.
Right.
Even
it's not finished. Educating yourself or anybody else is never finished. It's never a finished job.
Right.
And you're always innovating. Right. The biggest thing that I would say is one of my biggest success stories is that for me was being in a class one time where I asked a question, and I was afraid to ask the question first of all, but I did. And the students, after I asked it, there were a number of students that kind of laughed. And they laughed because in some particular way it was a naive question. But the answer by the professor was profound to me, and I've tried to do this with all my students, and I would hope that every student would listen to me. He said to the class, I don't know why you're actually laughing. He asked a question, and he's not right in the question in the question that he asked. But no one, the professor said, really learns from getting something right, or if they do, not very much. You only get to learn when you get something wrong. And so he said, no one in this class should ever be afraid of asking a question and worrying about that. And that is terribly important. Asking questions. One of the things that you find in certain cultures, like Jewish culture, for example, in America, which has been very successful, their culture is always asking questions. They say they'll ask, part of the culture is asking questions. If you don't, you won't get the answers.
Well, actually, the same thing also happens to be for the Indian culture, and Professor Amartya Sen in his book, The Argumentative Indian, he does talk about the Indian civilizational, temperament of always being in a debating mode, asking questions, and this is very integral to the Indian, civilizational ideology. And to all my learners out here also who are here, you can understand from Professor how he said that the importance of asking questions and importance of asking what you are learning, what is the need for that, for that particular, aspect of what you are learning, and how you would constantly trying to improve yourself, constantly trying to grow and develop yourself as a self. The self growth will then translate into the growth which you can put it on to the next, to your family, to your community, to your society, to your nation. So the improvement can move on in that sense. That's one of the reasons for education, I guess, the self-development and everything. Having said that, now there's of course another which I was trying to find out. Given that the very, very different stage of human history that we are today, it's a very different kind of a society we live in. We live in a very different kind of society, which we are so much, we're driven by technology, we are guided by technology, we are augmented by technology, and it sometimes moves on in a good way also, most of the time in a good way. The university that we have here, this whole interaction is happening because of the positive of where technology has taken us. Having said that, do you think there could be a flip side to have, being over occupied or over dependent on technology? We know the more popular versions of, yes, there are versions of how much of technology should be allowed to get into our lives, but in terms of education, what are the different kinds of challenges? I don't mean the challenge of AI where your answer sheets are written off by AI and you don't get to, you don't need to write, students don't need to work as hard. You go to ChatGPT, you go to AI, and you have a totally, engineered answers coming to you. What, according to you, would be some of the challenges that education is going to face with the barrage of AI and dominance of technology that will come into for us?
Well, I think it'll be an interaction between the individual learning and the machine learning.
Yeah.
That is, there'll be an interaction to what the individual learns and what the machine learns. And much of the fact now is that the machine learns a great deal from us.
Faster, and also faster.
Well, it does, but it's up until now, it's still dependent on us giving them more information.
Yes.
How it will be governed is something that's a political decision about what we think is the values that we will relate to and what we want to use and what we don't want to use. That'll have a lot to do with morals and values, and that will be worked out in the political sphere as well as in the social sphere. But one of the things about education is not just information, and we talked a lot about skills, and skills are developed, and what people should actually understand is that skills are not just presented to you. Skills are something you have to practice over and over again. Yes, you can learn to read, but now it's required, how fast can you read? You've got to continue to do that, and the only way you can do that is practice. So even though there's time constraints on all of us in our day, in other various ways, you've got to make time to practice those skills.
Yes, right.
And if you don't, no matter if you were an athlete and you're running, if you didn't run all the time, you wouldn't be as fast as you wanted to be. All of those skills have to be understood, whether it's math skills, reading skills, or writing skills.
Yes. So that's another very interesting observation, because through the kind of education that IGNOU imparts, the flexibility of time that is given. So if you have any other kind of skills that you would like to develop, when you've taken admission in IGNOU, you get that flexibility to, if you're a good singer, if you're a good sportsman, how best you can utilize your time. So this is also one of the aspects of an open and distance learning model which gives you the flexibility of time.
Right.
So technology does come into work in that, and you can make use of your time in the best possible way. I would like to now ask you something which is again almost parallel to what the Indian situation is. It's a comparison of the American way and the Indian way in terms of their the marginalized groups who have an access. In India, government has been an extremely humane and a just government system, and most of one of the primary focus of government has been for inclusion, and also in the area of education, inclusion is one of the most sought out thing. IGNOU is an extremely inclusive university, and most of our programs are sometimes all of the programs are designed, customized to address these marginalized sections also, so we can get the scheduled tribes and Now my question is, America also had a situation of marginalized communities, their indigenous communities that they had, and you've probably had a way of outreaching education and getting these communities into the main fold. Would you like to tell us something of how that happened?
Well, the most important thing I can share with India is that the job of marginalized people has not been solved in the United States.
We are in the same situation.
And it will never quite be completely solved in any society. And that's the important thing that all people should pressure all of their educational institutions about. The job is never done. And you've got to assess how well a job you're doing. That's really terribly important. So
it's always a process.
IGNOU has to say, how well are we doing what we want to do? Will we change what we want to do, but how well are we doing it so we can make changes? IGNOU is dependent on, as every college in the United States or a university in the United States or anywhere else is depending on how well they do in education at the lower levels. You inherit what they're doing. So most of the efforts, what IGNOU can do is actually make a teaching core that is actually in various regions of India, as well as when I talk about regions, you have, geographic regions, but geography can go in cities. In the United States, we have these issues that we have not solved. They are still problems. And we actually are constantly trying to develop and extend out. So there's never a finished product. One of the problems that I think that is that all education systems need to address, how well we're doing. And the best way I can say is, what's the problem? In the United States, and I suspect, and I have seen it in other places, people will go to school, and they go from one grade level to the next grade level to the next grade level. And we pass students on to the next grade level, particularly given their age and if they've done all these courses. But one of the problems that we have, and every society will have, you can actually promote a student to the next level, but what you really want is that student to be transitioned to the other level. Promoting them is not a transition. Promoting them from one level to the other means that you've allowed them to go to the next level. Transitioning means that they've moved from the level that they were at to a new level, and they can competently do all the tasks.
They carry the skills and the competence,
and they can competently do it. So somebody actually learns some of the arithmetic, but is in grade 6, but it can't do all of the arithmetic in grade 7. That is a problem, and that has to be addressed. What do we do with those students, and in order to bring them up, actually to the level at which we know they need to be at that level? And we can, if the United States is still struggling with that, and most of the people in the United States is struggling with this, with people who have been designed at low income and areas. And what is the major problem that we could actually address? And that has to do with resources. But there are two types of resources that people don't know. People look at just physical resources. Does everybody have a computer? Or do we have overhead projectors? Or technical things like that? Well, yes, that's one source of what we need. But the other source at which we need in the resource, it has to do with people after they're in the institution, is in their home or in their friends. Are there resources there that can continue to help them to learn, can actually bridge the gap between what they get in the school during the time they're there, whether it's IGNOU, college, high school, and what they get at home? Now, in the days of my parents did
what
not
happens
go,
if they don't get it at home?
Well, that's right. Then there's only other two sources that they can get it in. Either they can get it from their friends, who may help them, some getting it faster than another person, or they have to set up another institution outside of the formal one that they can visit and actually get the kinds of resource development. The resources will be there for them that actually can provide them the kinds of assistance they need. That's what has to happen. And we have been working on that. In the United States, we have, for poor people, we've started with, preschool.
Okay.
Before
and what
they
is
get
the other system that you have from, not the school and the other group that you said, where they can get the other resources?
Well, the one resource is if the other has to be an institutional sort of arrangement that they actually could get to if they wanted to go there, and there would be people who are professionals there after the school system.
After the school.
But remember, because what you see in middle class societies, when their child goes to school and the school only has them a certain amount of time, then they go home. But what does the school ask them to do at home? The school asks them to practice what they learned during the day.
Yeah, the homework.
The homework. And if they don't understand all the homework, in middle-class parents, most of the middle-class parents can help them. But my parents could not help me. So I had to get it from either my friends by calling them on the telephone or meeting with them, or some other source that would have remedial reading or remedial writing that would allow me to actually, or math, to allow me actually to ask that person questions. societies need to develop those kinds of things. I think universities actually have to help actually do those things at the lower level, where you have the web, because what you build at the lower level, you're going to inherit. That's what the universities, and we have understood that in the United States. And that's terribly, terribly important. I think that's one of the areas.
Well, this is a take definitely in terms of how self-help groups and something like that could have a parallel. Like you said, you have the university, but what if you don't understand where do you take your? So maybe that could be a take for us also here. We could support the secondary group somewhere for people to understand.
In the lecture I gave at the college here in
Chandanagar,
yes, one of the students asked me, how can we compete?
Yes.
One of them, he lost sight of how that India is competing very well and as a country. And he lost sight of that. Even the economic development in India it's even up to 7% development thing now is 7 is really quite remarkable, and that will help. And then other people getting more educated, it's helping. So clearly something good is still going on here. But he meant it for himself, and in a sense, and there was nothing wrong with that. He meant it for himself. How can I compete?
Yes, that
and the notion is that, and I wanted to say to him, he was in this college, and I say, the way in which you can compete is the same way you got into this college. You had to apply. You had to compete with other people. There were only so many chairs, if I'm using chairs as so many positions, and you competed. The way you competed there is the way you're going to have to compete in the markets. The markets are not without people, winning to get a place, and people who don't get in it. But the biggest thing about that is you can never, what is about America is not being satisfied. Just because you lost this time doesn't mean you won't win at some other time. And just because you won at some time doesn't mean you can't look up and say, win again. That's terribly important, and not lose sight of that, and to have and not be self-doubting or give up.
I think we end at a very, very important note that you have said right now. How do you deal with failures? How do you deal when when you fail in life? And that's what he's trying. Professor has been so eloquent in the way he said, একবার fail করলেন তাতে কিছু আসে যায় না. You have to keep going on and on and on to see where exactly, because once you fail doesn't mean that you will never succeed, or if you succeed it doesn't mean that you'll never fail again. It can happen, but we have to have those skills of how we can actually deal with this failure. Having said that, I think thank you very much for this, and I would like to just end this whole discussion with our gratitude, and of course for you to be here and with IGNOU with us and spending so much of your time and experience. And I think what we take back for our students today, for our learners here, is that you do need to figure out ways. You need to have a way of thinking by which is new, which can fit into your social scenario. It can also give you that energy and those resources by which you can problem solve somewhere nearby here. You can also, in that sense, try. There are two issues that needs the most attention from our learners now at this point of at our time. One is how you deal with your mental health. Second is how you try to make, where you take innovation in order to adapt into your life. Mental health is one which I would like to tell you that how you deal with failure will actually tell you what is the status of your mental health. And we can all think about how much as Indians we are extremely proud of the kind of heritage that we have, which determines our our ancient traditional life, the way we think about success, the way we think about ourselves. So we have to gather these as strong points to move on with our education. And thank you very much. IGNOU Regional Center Kolkata is always there and for your help. Please write to us if you have any doubts regarding your questions regarding your programs, most definitely, but also otherwise regarding any other new ideas that you want to be discussed, particularly in this forum that we do. We have these monthly podcast where we try to discuss some of these special issues. And for these special issues, we will look forward to your inputs and your requirements and your what you would choose or you would want us to discuss on. Thank you very much and have a very, very good evening.